Hello and welcome back. So today we are reading The Value of Curiosity, the story of Christopher Columbus. The story is read by Spencer Johnson, who's an MD. Just have to say that for purposes because I do not want to get copyrighted because we want to stay here as long as possible. So thank you guys for joining me and let's get right into this book. For my mother, Madeline Sankey Johnson, who fostered curiosity in all her children, and for my sister, Constance Johnson, whose curiosity has taken her around the world. This tale is about Christopher Columbus, whose curiosity led to the discovery of the New World. The story that follows is based on events in his life. More historical facts about Christopher Columbus can be found on page 63. Once upon a time, long ago, so long ago that people still thought the world was flat, there lived a little boy named Christopher Columbus. Little Christopher liked to stand at the window of his father's weaving shop and look out at the port of Genoa, Italy. What do you suppose Christopher saw when he looked out, and what do you suppose he thought about? Why, he saw the ships in the harbor, and he thought about how they sailed off to faraway places. Of course, the ships didn't sail as far as they do now. In those days, sailors did not like to lose sight of land. One day, Christopher and his little brothers went down to the wharf to get a closer look at the ships. "You know," said one of Christopher's brothers, "if you sail too far from shore, you'll end up with a sea of darkness, for no stars ever shine." "And monsters hide in there in the dark," said the other little brother. "There's no ocean of seaweed that catch ships and holds them so they never get away." "I wonder if that's really true," said Christopher. Just then, two sailors came strolling along the dock. "Excuse me," called Christopher to the men, "can you tell us if the stories about the Sea of Darkness are true? And is there really an ocean of seaweed that catches ships and holds them forever? Are there monsters out there? If ships sail too far out, can they fall off the edge of the world?" One of the sailors chuckled. We can have some fun with these youngsters," he whispered to his friend. The sailor made a scary face. "It's all true," he said. "There are islands in the Sea of Darkness that appear and disappear like magic. You can hear bells ringing under the sea and see ghostly horses race over the waves. The terrible seaweed stretches for miles, waiting to snare unwary ships. It's frightening out there, little mates. Very frightening indeed." Christopher agreed that this was frightening. Just the same, he decided that when he grew up, he'd go to sea and find out for himself what was true and what wasn't. Seaweed Tavern. "I'll be the ship's captain," he said, and as soon as he was old enough, he went to sea as a cabin boy. That was the way a seafarer began in those days. He worked hard, he swept out the cabins and made the beds and brought the captain his meals. He was very happy to be on a ship, going to sea. He was standing on the rail one day, looking out at the water, when a seagull swooped down and landed almost at his elbow. "Hi, Chris." Okay, I have to choose a different accent. "Hi, Chris." Maybe it should be girl. "Hi, Chris," said the bird. "My name's Seagull. I've been watching you, and you look as if you're thinking some very important thoughts. I'm curious, just what are you thinking about?" Christopher blinked. "I didn't know that seagulls talked," he said, but then he laughed out loud. Of course seagulls didn't talk. This particular seagull was just a make-believe friend. It was Christopher himself, having fun, pretending that he could chat with a bird. "Well, Mr. Gull," said Christopher, "You can call me C," interrupted the bird. "Oh, it's a mister." "That's what they named me because I like to fly around and see things. You understand how it is. I'm curious." "Curious?" said Christopher. "I don't know what that word means, but it means to have lots of curiosity," said the bird. I wonder about things, and I try to find out about them." Well, said Christopher, I guess I have a lot of curiosity myself. I was just wondering about what's on the other side of the ocean. That's great, said C. When will you find out? Just as soon as I said Christopher. Sure enough, as he grew older, Christopher became more and more curious about what was on the far side of the ocean. He kept sailing on ships. He kept studying maps and charts too. At last, he became a map maker himself. Seagull, his imaginary friend, was pleased about this. I'm finding out more and more all the time, said Christopher, and that makes me feel very good. Me too, laughed Seagull. One day, Christopher read a book of Marco Polo and his journey to the eastern lands called the Indies. It told about emperors who lived in beautiful places filled with spices and gold and silk. I want to go to the Indies like Marco Polo, thought Christopher. I want to see all those wonderful things with my own eyes. Soon after this, Christopher was walking on the beach. To his surprise, he found an unusual piece of carved wood and some pieces of a strange plant. They had been washed up by the waves. Christopher picked up the wood. How odd, he said. I've never seen anything like this before. Neither have I, said Seagull, and I fly lots of places and see many things. Christopher put the wood in his pocket and picked up the pieces of paper. Come on, See, he said, we'll try to find out about these things. But even the wisest man in the land couldn't tell Christopher anything about the wood and the plant. I'm sorry, said the wise man, but I have no idea what these are or where they come from. Don't ask me. I just switched to a southern-ish, I don't even know anymore, accent. And Christopher was filled with curiosity. They had to come from somewhere, he said. He went off by himself to think about it. After a while, he thought he knew where they came from. Do you know? They came from the other side of the ocean, he said. He exclaimed. The book about Marco Polo's travels is a true story. He really did see the land called the Indies. It was filled with strange things and odd plants and trees. Suppose the wisest navigators are right. Suppose the world is really round, like an apple. But almost everybody says it's flat, Seagull declared. What if they're wrong? Asked Christopher. What if the world is round? Why couldn't the piece of wood and the plant float here from the other side of the ocean? If they floated here, why couldn't we go there? We could sail west and come all the way around to the same place Marco Polo found when he traveled east by land. Terrific idea, cried Seagull, when the bird looked a bit worried. But then the bird looked a bit worried. What about the Sea of Darkness, he said. This is Seagull with a higher voice. Doesn't it scare you? Of course it does, admitted Christopher, but I'm curious, and if I want to find the truth, I have to take some chances. If you want to find the truth, you've got to take some chances. Okay, guys, obviously I'm in a different outfit, and I don't mean to take away from the video, but this is a different day, and I don't usually try to put videos into 2 different days, because then I kind of wreck the flow, and like accents and everything, but I'll try to make it as similar as possible. I just had a lot going on yesterday, and I couldn't get back to this, so let's just continue on. Pretty sure. Yeah. Well, if you must, you must, said Seagull. But if you're going to sail to the far side of the ocean, you'll need money for ships and supplies. Only kings and queens have such money, said Christopher. Only kings and queens have such money, said Christopher, and he set out to seek the rulers of all the nearby countries. No one was curious enough to help him, but then Christopher Columbus met Queen Isabella, and King Ferdinand of Spain. It would be wonderful to have a sea route to the Indies, they said. We might help you, but we'll have to think about it for a while. Christopher Columbus waited while Isabella and Ferdinand thought it over. He waited and waited and waited. He waited for 6 years. Of course, he kept studying and working so that he'd be ready when the chance came, but every now and then he'd get discouraged. Don't they have any curiosity? He asked himself. Don't they want to find out what lies on the other side of the ocean? Christopher had almost given up hope when word came at last. Queen Isabella was now very, very curious about the far side of the ocean. She was giving Columbus 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and Santa Maria. She was giving him the supplies he would need for his voyage. At first, Columbus was delighted, but then he found that getting the ships was the easiest part. What do you think was going to be harder? Getting the sailors to go on the voyage was going to be harder. In fact, it was going to be almost impossible. Columbus explained that the sea route to the Indies. About the sea route to the Indies. He coaxed and he pleaded, but were the sailors in a hurry to sign up for the voyage to the other side of the ocean? No, they most certainly were not. We'll never reach the Indies, warned a man. There are monsters beyond the sea of darkness, said another. There are huge monsters who can swallow whole ships, moaned a third sailor. Even if the monsters don't get us, we're doomed if we go too far, said the man. Remember, the world is flat. If we sail off the edge, we'll be lost forever. Then Columbus asked a very good question. How could anyone know about monsters or the edge of the world if no one had ever sailed there before? Good questions. Say, that's right, shouted the seaman. If we want to know what's true, we have to go find out for ourselves. I've gotten to wondering, and I'm too curious to say how I'll make the voyage. Good for you, said Columbus. There's something else you might want to know. Queen Isabella is offering a rich reward to all who sail with me. And so the men agreed to go, and Columbus had a crew. On August 3rd, 1492, the 3 ships sailed out of the Spanish harbor of Paros. Columbus was full of hope. He even carried with him letters from King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella to the emperors of the Indies. The ships sailed west, on and on they went until the land disappeared behind them, and the sea stretched around them in all directions. A silence had come over the men. They now knew that no ship had ever before come so far. Then suddenly a man cried out in fright. An ocean of seaweed, he shouted. We're sailing right into it. It'll catch us, cried a second man. We'll never get away. It seemed true. There was seaweed on the surface of the ocean for as far as the eye could see. The sailors were sure that the seaweed had roots going all the way down to the bottom of the sea. They thought that the ships would be tangled in the weed. They feared that they would never escape. Don't worry, said Christopher. Look at that seaweed. It's not thick. It's just floating on top of the water. We can sail right through it. And sure enough, the ships did sail through. As they went, Columbus noticed something interesting. He scooped up a handful of the weed and showed it to the sailors. What do you think they saw? See the little crab on the seaweed, said Columbus. How can land be far away when such creatures are crawling around here? Have faith, we must be nearing the Indies. The men felt better then. They even began to be curious. They wondered what it would be like when they reached the Indies. But then Christopher put the crab back on the seaweed and went off by himself. But when Christopher put the crab back on the seaweed and went off by himself, his face was serious and sober. I hope this little crab is a land creature, Christopher said to sea. We've been at sea so long, sometimes even I begin to wonder if we'll ever see sea again. do you think something that you've never done before? When you do something that's never been done before. Goodness. When you do something that you've never done before, it's bound to be scary, said C. But it's a good thing. We have to be brave, curious people like you, Christopher, or we'd never find out anything. I changed her voice a little bit. Christopher would have liked to talk with C a little longer, but he suddenly heard a loud noise. The deck tilted under his feet. A fierce wind began to come up without any warning. It roared around the ships and tossed the sailors to the decks. It caught C and slammed the poor bird against a mast. I didn't show this one. And we're on this one. Christopher caught C and held him fast. Are you all right? He shouted. I'm afraid my wing's broken, shouted C. The sailors cowered down and clutched at ropes and the railings as the wind shrieked and howled like an angry monster. Then, almost as suddenly as it had started, the wind stopped. The raging sea became as calm as a pond. The sailors were quiet. They were frightened. Do you know why no wind at all would frighten the sailors just as much as a heavy gale? That's right. Without any wind in the sails, the ship was becalmed. It wouldn't move at all. The sailors began to mutter amongst themselves. We'll never get home, said one man. We'll stay here in the middle of the ocean till we die. I wish Columbus would fall overboard, said another. Don't say that, cried a third man. Without Columbus to navigate, we might never find our way home. So the men watched the dolphins play near the ship, and they waited anxiously. Christopher waited too, and of course, since C was really just Christopher's own thoughts, C was with him in his cabin. How long will we be becalmed in these unknown seas? Christopher wondered aloud. There's no way to tell, said C. That's what makes it so scary. Finally, after many days, a gentle wind began to blow. They were traveling on again, and little waves were slapping against the hull of the ship. The men on the deck could laugh again and wonder what they would find when they reached the Indies. Even C's wing felt better. He thought he would be able to fly again very soon. So they sailed at a good speed for many days. Then at last they heard the sound that they were waiting for. A cannon boomed from the other ships. Land, shouted a sailor. I see land. But then Christopher and the other men looked out across the water. They saw no land. The sailor had been mistaken. There was no safe harbor where they could anchor, and no place to rest. There was only water. Miles and miles of water. They sailed on. There was nothing else they could do. But now the crew didn't feel frightened. They didn't feel curious either. How do you suppose they felt? They felt angry. We want to go home, they shouted to Columbus. If you don't turn these ships around, we will. That's mutiny, thought C. You'll go to prison if you do that, shouted Columbus. We don't care, cried the men. Desperate, Columbus tried to awaken the sailors' curiosity. Don't you want to find out what's on the other side of the ocean? He asked. Don't you want to go home and tell your children and grandchildren that you were the first ones to sail to the Indies? If we don't turn back, we may never see our children and grandchildren again, said the men. Let's sail for 3 more days, said Columbus. If we don't sight land by then, we'll turn back. The men grumbled and muttered, but they agreed to sail on. We must be getting near the place where the world ends, one man said. He listened for thunder of the waterfall that would surely take place when the ocean poured over the edge of the world. He began to tremble. I don't hear anything yet, he said hopefully. Yes, but I don't see any land either. All I see is water. If there is land ahead, I wonder what it will be like. Will it be like the Indies? Will it be like the golden palaces? Will there be golden palaces? I don't think there is any land, said the third man. We'll have to turn back. Suddenly the men heard a noise high above them. It was a soft, hurrying, flapping eyes. What do you suppose it was? "Birds!" shouted Happy Sailor. "It's a flock of birds!" "At last!" cried C. "That means there's land. Land is nearby." The sailors cheered, for of course he was right. Birds couldn't fly endlessly over the ocean. They needed a place to land and rest their wings. At last, they were close to land, so the ships changed course, and they followed the birds, and now they were so very close to safety. The men began to wonder what kind of place was it that they were coming to. Well, they soon knew that it was a place where there were trees and bushes and lots of green growing things, for they saw twigs and leaves and fresh little red berries floating in the water. "It won't be long now," they said eagerly. Night fell, but no one thought of sleeping. They all watched. Then suddenly one of the men saw something, a dark mass rising from the water, very black and huge. Was it a monster? The cannon boomed, and the crew came running, eager to see. "Land!" they shouted. "Land ahead!" There it was at last. A small island lay just before them, rising up out of the water. The flags were raised on all three ships. The cannon boomed again, so loudly that the sleeping moon seemed to stir a bit. Perhaps it looked down and asked what these men were doing there, and why they were making so much noise. It's beautiful, isn't it?" Christopher said to C. "I was beginning to be afraid we'd never see it again. We'd never get here. I wonder what it's like." Columbus wasn't the only one who was curious. The entire crew had crowded against the railings to look at the island. They could hardly wait until morning. At dawn, Columbus and some of his men climbed into a small boat. C perched on the prow, and they rowed toward the shore. Columbus reached inside his coat to make sure that his important letters were safe. They were the letters of the greeting that Queen Isabella had given him. He was to present them to the Emperor of India and the Emperor of China. Christopher Columbus was in for a surprise. There wasn't a single emperor waiting on the beach. In fact, there was no one waiting on the beach. Columbus saw only white sand and blue sky and some bushes. "These are the same sort of plants we saw washed up on the shore at home," Columbus said to C. "I was right. They did come from the far side of the ocean." Just then the bushes moved. Someone was hiding there. "Why, these must be Indians," said Columbus, when some people with red-brown skin came out to greet him. Columbus had made a very natural mistake. He thought he had landed in the Indies, so even though these people didn't look a bit like the yellow-skinned people Marco Polo had described, he called them Indians. Now, of course, you know where Columbus actually had landed, don't you? That's right. He was in America. He was on the island of San Salvador, off the coast of America. The islanders were very friendly. They didn't seem to mind being called Indians, and they showed their island to Columbus. They showed him some neighboring islands too. They couldn't show him any emperors or great cities or gold. They didn't have any. And that's why Native Americans were called Indians for so long. "I'm a little disappointed," said Columbus to C. C was quite well by now, and no longer had a bandage on his wing. He laughed a loud seagull laugh. "When you're curious and you go looking for answers, you may not find the ones you expect," he said. "That's part of the excitement." "I hope Queen Isabella will be excited," said Columbus, "and I hope she'll like what we have found." So, after looking around for several months, Columbus and his crew set sail for home. They had lots of interesting things to show the Queen, trees and plants. Even some of the Indians went back with Columbus. They They were curious too and wanted to see what was on the other side of the ocean. I think this is a cool picture. The voyage back to Spain was stormy, but at last they arrived home with their strange cargoes. "We did it," said the sailors proudly. "We didn't turn back. We were with Columbus and we found a new land." The sailors hurried home to tell their families that they had fallen off the edge of the world and that they hadn't been attacked by monsters. Christopher Columbus immediately went to see the Queen. "I have been to the other side of the ocean," he said. He told Queen Isabella, "I have found a strange new land, and I have brought back many interesting things for you." Then Columbus showed the Queen's advisors he had made. Then Columbus showed the Queen's advisors a map he had made. It was like no other map ever made before. It showed the ocean and the islands he had seen on the far side. "I know that this is a true map," said Columbus. "I made it only after I had been to the islands myself. I'm sure, though, that there are other places where no one has ever been. Who will draw the maps of these other places? Who has enough curiosity to go out and find them?" "I am not a sailor," said the Queen, "but I am full of curiosity. I will help you. I'll see to it that you can sail to the new world you have found just as often as you wish." So he sailed to the Bahamas. That's what it looks like. I think so. Even then, Columbus did not know what a truly great discovery he had made. Until his voyage, no one in Europe had even expected that there were two huge continents, North America and South America, on the other side of the ocean. This is pretty cool. I think it's crazy that he made a map. How did you orient yourself? I wouldn't be able to. Later, with the help of the wise Queen, Christopher sailed back to the America 3 more times. He continued to be curious. He continued trying to learn new things. Even when he didn't find anything, he knew it was fun just to look. Because Christopher was curious. He opened the way for later explorations, and because he was curious, we will never forget Christopher Columbus. Now you may wonder about the value of curiosity in your own life. Is there something you'd like to learn more about? Not everyone has to be curious, of course. It's up to you. But if you are curious, you may find out some wonderful things. Whatever you decide to do, let's hope it's something that will make you happier. Just like our friend, Christopher Columbus. And that is the end of our story, but like I usually do, I'll read the historical facts. I just have some thoughts. So, I am an entrepreneur, and I just think it's very curious I just think it's good to be creative and curious so that you can build new things off of maybe even old things or build something new. And I love the last couple pages always because it always kind of rounds it all up of the value. And if you want to learn more about something, go after those things that set your soul on fire and just make you so happy. And there's no point in doing something that doesn't make you happy. There's no point of just going through life forcing yourself to do something. Even if what you love is lower income or I'm not going to talk about money too much, but just that type of thing. Always go after what you love and what you're passionate about and what sets your soul on fire. So that's the end of my thoughts, but let's get into the historical facts. And also, guys, another fun thing about Christopher Columbus, the little phrase or saying, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, if you ever want to remember the dates. Historical facts. Christopher Columbus was born sometime between August 25th and October 31st, 1451, in the seaport city of Genoa, Italy. His father was a wool weaver. At age 14, Christopher Columbus began a seafaring career between voyages to the then unknown parts of the world. Columbus kept busy with the making and selling of charts and maps. And an experienced seafarer and student of natural science, it is not surprising that Columbus concluded that he would reach the rich continent of Asia by sailing west. Columbus was fascinated by Marco Polo's account of his travels to Asia in 1275. After 200 years before Columbus's first voyage to the New World, Columbus might not have undertaken his historic voyage except for a single off-chance event. While walking near his home on the Portuguese island of Madeira, he discovered strange plants and pieces of wood washed up on the beach. Columbus concluded that these foreign objects had drifted across the ocean from unknown lands, while other mariners were struggling to reach Asia by sailing east around the tip of Africa, infinitely shorter. By his calculations, the route was only 2,400 miles. He was wrong. Little did Columbus know that not less than 10,000 nautical miles away lay between Western Europe and Asia. Columbus first discussed his plan with King John II of Portugal in 1484, but after months of waiting he was refused any help. He then traveled to Spain, but Queen Isabella thought Columbus's price was too high. Instead of one ship, he wanted 3, and if he reached the Indies, he asked for a title, a coat of arms, 1/10 of all the profits brought to Spain. Columbus waited 6 years. Finally discouraged, Columbus set out to seek the support of the French king. But a powerful official of the Spanish court, Luis de Santiago, advised Isabella to change her mind. Columbus was 4 miles out of town when the Queen's courier caught up with him. Even after the Queen had granted Columbus 3 ships, it was difficult to get a crew to sail with him. Evidence of unpopularity expedition is shown by the royal decree of April 30th, 1492, ordering the suspensions of judicial proceedings against criminals, providing that they sailed with Columbus. It was this document that probably started the myth that Columbus's crew consisted entirely of prisoners. In fact, only 4 men took advantage of this decree. When a respected shipper, Martin Alonso Pinzon, agreed to sail on the Pinta, he encouraged the rest of the sailors to sign on for the historic voyage. On August 3rd, 1492, Columbus sailed for the port of Palos in Andalusia, Spain. From the port. After a month on open sea, it was clear that the task was a larger one than they had imagined. The men complained and threatened to turn back whether Columbus ordered it or not. Finally, on October 2nd, 1492, at 2 a.m., 71 days after leaving Spain, a sailor on the Pinta, Rodrigo de Triana, shouted, "Terrier! Terrier! Land! Land!" The island of San Salvador, 375 miles southeast of the coast of Florida. He had been sighted. Columbus spent more than 3 months in the Caribbean before returning to Spain, or Caribbean, however you say it. Columbus was to make 3 more voyages from Spain to look in vain for the Indies. He discovered many of the Caribbean islands as well as South America and Central America. Columbus never landed on the mainland of North America, but he had paved the way for other explorers and had forever changed the course of history. Thank you, Christopher Columbus. I think it's funny because literally till his dying days, he did think that he landed on the Indies, but anyway, that's just all other stuff. But I think it's really interesting, and I love how they take historical things and put it into value. It's not just a value book. It's about someone's life. So thank you guys so much for joining me for the Value of Curiosity, the story of Christopher Columbus, told by Spencer Johnson, who is an MD. I have to say those things for copyrights. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys for the next video. Subscribe to get notified so that you can know every time I upload a video, so that we can go through this together and create a little family together. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.